For the past year, I've challenged myself to try something I've never tried before: learn to draw. More specifically, learn to draw my waifu, Saber, who I definitely don't have any obsession with.
Are you sure about that?
In this video, you're going to see my progress as I go from drawing these basic sketches a whole year ago to today, where I can create finished pieces like this.
Oh my
But
god!
first, we need to go back almost a year ago to when I made this video on how I quit using AI image generators and switched to drawing. I'll be covering some of the content from that first video, but I'll mostly be focusing on my journey since then and going over some drawing tips and what worked for me and what didn't. As discussed in that video, after quitting using AI image generators, my first attempt at drawing Saber was this drawing right here. Initially, I focused entirely on the face, spending a lot of time getting it to look at least somewhat decent. That kept up until I got this drawing, which was okay enough for me to tell myself, wow, I might actually be able to do this. From there, I drew a variety of anatomy practice drawings, the cropped versions of which are shown here. Eventually, I created this drawing, which is the one I showcased in my first video. One thing that I'll note about this drawing was that at the time of drawing it, I felt it was decently good looking. However, I now feel like it looks pretty bad. I've come to realize that this pattern of thinking is normal when producing art, and I'll discuss that more later. One major change I made after that was switching from Photoshop to Clip Studio Paint. I did this for a variety of reasons, and I'm very glad I did. Clip Studio Paint is less expensive and has a lot of useful features here and there that Photoshop does not for painting. For example, the CSP Paint Bucket tool fills gaps and you can more easily select and transform from multiple layers at once. Finally, CSP has an expansive asset library for anime drawing. The next major drawing that I produced was this one here, which I recorded and I have a video about. This drawing was my first attempt at drawing an outdoor scene, and although I now know I can do better than this, I very much enjoyed the process of making this type of background, and I've drawn similar backgrounds since then. After that, I drew this one where I decided to try something new for the colors, which was very fun. This drawing was a good experiment with color highlights, and although I feel like I've improved since then, this was a great start. The next major drawing I did was this one, which I also made a video on a few months ago. This drawing was my second attempt at a mountainous background, and I was happy with the results at the time, but I again think I've improved since then. And most recently, I drew these four similar drawings, all of which use the newest style that I've been trying, which is to color primarily with hard edge brushes and only sometimes soften the edges with a blending brush. Additionally, I've started to get more advanced with the hair, sometimes drawing Saber with her hair down, as you can see in the current drawing that I'm making. And that's every major drawing I've created up until now. Now you may be thinking that doesn't seem like a lot, and you're absolutely correct. There are also these drawings, which are all more anatomy practice, and those I will not be showing. So that brings us to today, where I'm currently producing my newest piece you can see here. For the 1-year anniversary drawing, I wanted to do something special, so I decided to draw Saber's Avalon dress. This dress is pretty complex, but luckily I of course had this figure here to use as a reference. Overall, this journey has been extremely worthwhile. One thing I briefly mentioned in my first video is how rewarding drawing is. To see my ability go from this to this is something that I wouldn't trade anything for. My whole life, I've been a computer and math nerd. I have 2 computer engineering degrees and I work full-time as a software engineer, but thankfully not in the AI industry. To put it simply, drawing was something that I never even thought of trying, much less thought I'd be able to do. But I gave it a fair shot, and I've blown my mind away with what I'm capable of producing. And to anyone saying, oh, I don't have the time for that, I've estimated that I've spent around 500 hours drawing over the past year, and honestly, that's not a lot. I think that is very doable for the average person. I work full-time 40 hours a week, and I still had plenty of time to practice drawing and do other things, and honestly, I could have spent even more time drawing. I would spend an average of 10 to 15 hours per drawing, spacing that out between multiple days, sometimes even weeks. So I would say that it is doable for anybody who wants to try it. And with that, I'd like to now share what I've learned to hopefully try and help anybody who's thinking of learning to draw like I did. As a quick disclaimer, please note that everything I'm about to tell you is simply what worked and didn't work for me. Your learning process may be entirely different. I'm also still not even that good, so take everything I say here with a grain of salt. Let's start back at the beginning. A lot of people start learning to draw with a pencil and paper. I personally don't recommend doing this, and I'll explain why. In my opinion, with physical drawing, correcting mistakes takes longer, as for example, you can't rotate or shift objects. In the beginning, you need to correct as many mistakes as possible until it looks the way you want it to look. Drawing is all about learning to recognize mistakes and figuring out how to fix them. It's a question of efficiency. The faster you can fix mistakes and the more of them you can fix, the faster you will improve. And that doesn't mean you should never draw by hand. Instead, every so often, you can try making a physical drawing to see how much you've improved. I found that after a few months of digital drawing, I could draw a decent sketch of Saber without much issue on paper, which is something I couldn't do before. The conclusion I came to is that there is some overlap between digital drawing and drawing on paper, but for me at least, it was much more efficient to just learn digital from the start. That now brings me to my next point, and that's what hardware to start with for digital drawing. I recommend getting a graphics tablet or an iPad to start with, but note that you don't need to ever get an expensive iPad or drawing tablet with a screen if you don't want to. You will then need painting software such as Kirita, Clip Studio Paint, Procreate, or Photoshop for example, and I recommend trying a few to see what you like. Some positives of each are Kirita is free and open source, Procreate is good on the iPads, Photoshop is widely used by professionals, and Clip Studio Paint has the most features for anime drawing in my opinion. For graphics tablets, the best thing about them is the cheap ones aren't very expensive. I originally got this cheap drawing tablet for taking notes over COVID, and it somehow lasted me until today. It's finally starting to fail on me now as the pen tip now keeps falling out and the pressure sensitivity isn't the best. But it's worked decent enough and it's cheap and therefore I'd recommend something like it to start with. I'll be upgrading to a Wacom tablet or something like that pretty soon. Once you start using the drawing tablet, note that there will be an initial learning curve as it isn't natural to look at a monitor and draw with your hand. I happen to have a lot of practice from doing math homework on mine, so I was already pretty used to using one. If I remember correctly, it didn't take very long for me to get used to it. However, this was also like 5 or 6 years ago, so I can't say for sure. Next, I'm going to discuss monitors. You don't need to do this at the beginning, but eventually you may want to look into either color correcting your monitor or buying a monitor with good color accuracy. A few months ago, I got this OLED monitor, and it's a complete night and day difference in terms of contrast and color accuracy. You don't need to go all out like this, but having a monitor with good color accuracy will improve your output color significantly. I found it was really annoying drawing something, loading it onto my OLED phone, and seeing all the colors screwed up. Here's 2 example images showing approximately what my OLED monitor looks versus all my LCD monitors. As you can see, the contrast is incredibly different. Keep in mind that better hardware will never improve your skills directly. All it does is help your art look better in the long run. Now on to the actual drawing tips. The first one is something I briefly mentioned earlier, and that is that drawing is all about learning to recognize mistakes. Everything you do should be with this in mind. As you draw something, you'll probably think it looks good, and then a few months later, you'll see all the spots where you could have done it better. This is good, and it means that you are improving. The faster you can catch mistakes, the better, and luckily, there are ways to catch mistakes earlier. One thing I've learned to do is flip the canvas occasionally, and this helps spot anatomy mistakes, especially with the face. My next point is time per drawing. I believe that quality over quantity is very important when it comes to drawings, at least for me. Don't rush to finish a drawing by set deadline, and don't try to do an entire thing in an afternoon. Just go at your own pace and finish it when it's done. I personally like to take 24-hour breaks between different parts of the drawing. For example, I'll do the sketches the first day, the line art the next day, and the coloring the day after. Taking a break allows you to spot mistakes that you may glance over otherwise. Sometimes all you need is a second look a few hours later to spot a glaringly obvious mistake. And the next point is draw what you want to learn. If you ever only draw sketches and never line arts or colorings, you'll never get any practice doing those things and you'll never learn that. If you never draw hands, you'll never improve or learn at drawing hands. If you never draw backgrounds, you'll never improve at that, which is one that I personally struggle with, is sometimes I get lazy and don't want to do a background. If you want to learn to draw something, you have to practice drawing that particular thing. Next, keep challenging yourself. For me, I want to get really good at drawing Saber, and that's why I always draw Saber. I have no reason to draw anything else at this time, but if I kept drawing Saber in the exact same way, I will become complicit and never improve. To avoid this, I critique my old artworks to find ways to improve my drawings of Saber every single time I make a new one, even if these improvements are small. And I still believe that I'm improving, even if the progress is slower than that at the start. And in case anyone's asking, when are you going to draw something else? My response is that I simply don't want to right now. Next, I'll discuss some things that I don't recommend doing. Firstly, I have never traced before and I never plan on doing so. Personally, I learn best with the swim or sink mentality. If I don't figure out how to do it myself, I won't learn it. Tracing does not teach you anything as you're only learning to trace. You're not actually learning the underlying reasons as to why the line needs to be in one spot versus 10 pixels to the left or right. And finally, never use AI images as a reference or trace AI. As previously mentioned, I used to use AI image generators before quitting and learning to draw. Let me tell you that AI has no understanding of art concepts such as anatomy, color theory, or perspective, even if you may think it does. To learn to draw, you have to learn these concepts yourself, and you simply won't learn by referencing something that doesn't understand them either. Instead, find references drawn by real skilled artists who understand these concepts, and also use real-world objects and examples you may have around you. I sometimes even use my legs and hands as references, for example. If it helps, there's this AI filter for ublock origin, which helps filter out AI results from internet searches. I've linked it down below in the description. And don't even get me started on all the ethical issues with AI, but that's not something I want to go into in this video. So that's about it as far as what I've done over the past year. For the most part, I went into this with no idea what the outcome would be, and the results are something I never would have expected. That said, I'm by no means done yet, and this is still just the beginning. I can't wait to see what I'll be capable of 1 year from now, 2 years from now, and even 5 years from now. And now on to the rest of the video, where I finished my latest drawing. So here's the finished drawing. I did a few things after the recording, mostly just adjusting the brightness of different areas such as the mountains. Overall, I'm very happy with the result, and I think this is by far the best drawing I've ever produced. I'm very happy with how the galaxy and sky looks, and I think I improved it from my first attempt, which honestly looked terrible. I do think I could have spent more time doing the grass, as plant drawing is something I wish to do more. But for now, this is a good representation of my progress at the 1 year mark, and again, I can't wait to see what I end up doing in the future. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, and share it, and thank you for watching.